To get the thing started here. So, welcome everybody. This is the Tinker Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Greg Dowd. Today I am joined by Sam Swanson. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you got it right.
Uh,
Sam Swanson.
Sam Swanson from Slave to Servant. He's got a band, and we're going to have a conversation tonight about his story and get into, you know, how he got to where he is now. So, Sam, thank you for coming on my podcast and taking the time to talk to me tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. This is my second podcast interview in relation to this new record and this band. So I appreciate you having me.
Great. So tell me your story, man. So, how did you um, get to the point where you're playing music at the Self Reliance Festival?
Where do we start? I mean, you want me to start with Self Reliance and how I heard about that, and or do you
Sure,
want, or do you
sure,
want,
yeah, yeah.
do you want
So,
to hear any background on my musical journey? I come I'm come from Chicago,
okay,
so I used to play in bands in Chicago, like in short. Um, Played in the whole like Fall Out Boy era of bands, Plain White Tees, all those bands.
oh yeah,
That was the scene that I was a part of, like playing um, in a few different bands. Made like 10 records. Then I got married and moved to upstate New York, and kind of gave up music for a long time, and went through some huge leaps and bounds in my thinking and my realizations and in studying and and reconnected, I would say, with my faith, and in a much deeper way than I had as like a child, being a kid that was in church.
hmm.
So I guess that Slave to Servant was kind of born in like during the experiences of that era of me kind of trying to find what is truth, like, and so I started writing songs about it as I started a podcast, and I took a lot of the content that I interviewed researchers on from 2013 to 2016, and put it into my music. So
Oh
that's
wow,
the short end of the deal. But if we fast forward, Self Reliance Festival, a year ago almost, I moved out of my apartment, and I had bought a Greyhound bus, and I decided to go full time nomad.
oh wow,
And and I had just broken off an engagement with a woman that I was in love with, and I was like, I just knew it wasn't right, though. I just knew that something. I had a feeling like I wouldn't be able to fulfill my purpose, which is, I believe, this is a big part of it. And I couldn't see like settling down and having another family again with someone and being able to do it. I
hmm,
was like, I don't think this is going to work out.
hmm.
And so I ended up throwing in the towel. But that being said, I had gone to the Ozarks where my parents have a homestead, and I started working on my bus. I started just reflooring it and everything. And I was listening to podcasts, and Jack Spirko was the ticket, because I've been listening to him for a little while. Even when I used to have my podcast, I wanted to interview Jack because a friend of mine turned me on to him, and I wanted to interview him on there about survival skills and things like that. Just because I've always felt that in the world of, if I dare say it, like conspiracies or New World Order or whatever you want to get into,
Yeah,
uh, it's easy to just soak in a lot of information and not be able to do anything about it.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
part of like when I was doing God's Property Radio, part of my mission was to interview people that a lot on health, a lot of because we can actually control what we put in our bodies,
Yeah.
and so that was a big thing. So I interviewed people on vaccines. I interviewed people on holistic medicine. I interviewed a chiropractor, a home birth expert. Actually, the actual doula that helped my then wife like give birth to my daughter, home birth at home. So I mean, we interspersed a lot of health stuff, and we found ourselves actually we had more of a female audience than some of the other podcasts in our network that were covering some of the same topics, because women tend to care about their children and their families and have more of a nurturing aspect. So that was a cool thing. So Jack was next on my list to try to contact. That would have been back in 2015 or something like that. But I never did. And I've always remembered his podcast because I listened to it a few times back then. But then I started connecting with it and putting together a bug out bag, kind of getting down this whole rabbit hole of trying to be self-reliant in my nomadic new way. And I was listening to his podcast, and Nicole Sauce was on as a guest. And um, she was talking about the festival, and I was like, it's $75. I can bring a tent. This just sounds like something I should do.
Yeah.
And it actually worked out perfectly, because I had to take my kids the day before the festival. I had to take my kids to the airport in St. Louis. So I drove all the way from Arkansas to St. Louis, and then I was like 4 hours away anyway. And just so happened to work out that I didn't have my kids. So I got to just go soak it in by myself. And it ended up being, um, I don't know how other people perceived it that were there, but
Mm.
like I made a lot of connections.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and first person I talked to was John Willis. Mind you, I didn't know anybody. Like I'm not familiar with SOE. I'm not familiar with Bear Independent. The only thing I know is Jack Spirko, you know? So,
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
so I'm oblivious that these people have followings or anything. And it just seemed to hit it off with John and Nicole. And um, it was, I don't know. It's funny. Like I've said this on another podcast. I think it was Nighthawk. I don't know if you know Nighthawk, but he's Nicole's.
Yeah.
But Nighthawk let me park my car on the honor system. He's like, but you better come back and pay me for the parking, you know? And so I went to go get money for him at my tent. And I was on my way to bring it back to Nighthawk, and I couldn't help but overhear um, this guy with like a Southern accent. And there was a picnic table full of dudes. And he goes, it was something like, yeah, the tribe of Dan, yeah, they went on to create all them Norse gods and Odin, and and I was just like, okay, I think I gotta just sit down here, because these are my people, because this is like the stuff that me and like Canary Cry Radio and all my friends like in Revelations Radio Network, like stuff that we would talk about on our podcast and have researchers on and theologians and people. Like, it was just rad.
Yeah.
And so I sat down, and it turned into a 2-hour Bible study and it was Bear. It was Bear was the one who said it. Like, I didn't know who
Oh,
it was.
yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, and I was just like, this dude's awesome. Like, these people are awesome. It's so amazing that we can sit here at a picnic table and not feel ostracized or like censored that we can't talk about our faith. It's like Self Reliance Festival is all inclusive. Like, they let you do your thing. Nobody's judging you. You know, I feel like we're made to feel I don't think it's like that in the world. Like, if we were just going to sit at a picnic table, you know, somewhere in the city or something, like, man, I mean, you could probably get away with it, but I think that it would be very, very odd. And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. You'd probably get some funny looks. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, anyway, like, long story short, like John and Amanda and Nicole and just great people. And I had some conversations with John, and I thought to myself, like, you know, I've been this album, this whole journey of Slave to Servant has been a long one. And I'm finally at the point where I was ready to release the record. Like, I had the vinyl pressed, I had some shirts made, but there's some other things I wanted to do. I've been wanting to film a lot of videos for the record. And I thought to myself, this would be perfect if we could just play like right after the last speaker. Like, I think that people would embrace us and we would embrace them. And it would just be like this. I'm done with cities. I don't want to go to a city. Like, you got to pay me a lot of money to go to a city at this point, you
Yeah.
know? So I, I just feel like these kind of festivals are where it's at, and just
Yeah.
creating a counterculture. And I say that in a different way. I don't mean I'm just against like wokeism I just mean like something that's like here to heal. Like, I don't care I try not to judge people, you know, where they're at, like whatever they are, wherever they're beliefs are or anything, but just like flip this thing whole upside down, like love against the machine instead of rage against the machine, and just I don't know. I just feel like we are so disconnected from each other with technology and with uh with divisiveness, with the dichotomy,
Yeah.
and uh, I don't know. I guess that's like my main thing, and I just saw a lot of that there. I saw a lot of the people there were just good people that want to do good things. So,
Yeah, yeah, man. And it really is like people got to take action. And I think like the people that show up there are people that are taking action in some way in their life. And if not, they're interested in what solutions are offered to help, make their life better by
hmm
taking those actions to becoming more independent and less, you know, less dependent on the system that we live in. Because I'm sure you've come to the conclusion that this system is set on slavery. So I mean, it's like it's
always has been. I
yeah.
mean, nothing new under the sun. It's always been that way since Egypt. It's like it's just go back.
I've gone into that myself and looking back, like I read this one book that talked about how the symbolism of the pharaoh had the crook and the flail. So that's how you would lead you. It'd either lead you through adulation, making you think he's a god, leading the sheep softly with the crook, or through coercion and violence through the flail. So yeah, it's very ancient. All
Yeah,
these the methods of controlling other humans.
totally. I mean, there is a serious inner peace issue that people have that want to control people. Um, I think it's fear. People are, it's truly just their own fear. If you want to control somebody else, you got to really look at that heart issue that you have going on and that head issue. Like, you got to change something about yourself. I don't know. It is our flawed nature, I do believe, yes, but it's it's something that we can remedy, I think. Um, but I guess that takes a lot of optimism and a lot of planning and a lot of awareness. But people who like power don't and have power don't really want to give power up. So,
Yeah,
and what is power too? Like that's another question. It's like I don't know. I think about this. Like I'm sitting in here, the idea that the lights are on right now, like that's called power. Like that's named power for a reason, because they can take our power away from us. You know what I mean? Like we don't control the power grid. You know, so,
right.
and just like the names of things, even like words are very powerful. And
They are.
uh, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's nothing new under the sun. So
So that was the last festival before you guys came out to play. Was the first
yeah,
time you had gone?
March. That would have yeah, first time I went in March and hit it off with them and mentioned it, and they reached out to me within a week to book the band, and we didn't get paid or anything. We just did it. Um, she had mentioned that there were some speakers that she wanted to get, and I know Nicole really isn't making any money on it, and I lost money doing it, but that's okay. I just wanted to do something worthwhile
Yeah.
and see how it went, because that was our first official public performance aside from that live stream that we did acoustically
Oh
in
wow.
20. So I figured first one's a freebie. Let, let's see how it goes. Let's see what the experiment is. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that was my second time at Self Reliance Fest, and I'm hoping to go again this spring as well.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe bring the band again and do it again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that'd be great. So, tell me, like, how long have you? So you said you were playing back in the day when you were in Chicago. Did that music start really young with you? That you
yeah,
were interested in playing and learning how to do music and do all that.
yeah. I think in 1995/6, like going into 96. Um, of all things, well, like my first love was always R&B and hip hop,
That's what
actually.
I was gonna ask. What kind of styles and
So like,
maybe influences you had?
yeah, as a singer, I'm way more inclined to. I mean, I grew up listening to like Jodeci and Tupac. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that was like my stuff. Like SWV and Whitney Houston and all kinds of, just like, I just like that kind of soul. I really like
Mm.
gospel music a lot too, and jazz.
Yeah.
But I kind of came late to the game to Nirvana. I remember listening to Nirvana's Nevermind um, in junior high, and this was like '95, I think, when I first got Nevermind. So that was like a full year and a half. Well, I mean, it was released in '91, so I always knew Teen Spirit, but I didn't know the other songs, and I found it to be one of the most flawless records I've ever heard. And the fact that I could go from listening to Bone Thugs and Harmony to like this, it was a completely different world, but it grabbed me and it was authentic.
Hmm.
And there was an element also of punk in Nirvana, whereas like bands in the grunge era were largely more metal based or blues based, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think Nirvana was the only one that really had a punk aesthetic to them. And I've always been attracted to punk.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I think that punk is kind of uh, it's sort of reminds me of hip hop in a way. Like it's very rebellious,
Right. Yeah.
And it came out at a time and there was a movement and it was counterculture at the
It's a
time.
lot of energy in it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I would say that both those genres or subgenres have now become very corporate. And once you become corporate, you no longer have a voice of your own. So
Yeah, it was very like underground, kind of like, you know, uh, certain people were listening to it and getting together and doing, little shows or whatever in their local areas or whatever.
yeah,
And you were kind of the strange kid in high school when I was in high school anyway. If you're listening to punk music,
yeah,
but I grew
yeah.
up in
No.
the South, so
Well, in punk rock, I feel like is I've always thought that punk rock, I associated punk rock with anarchism, like I like true traditional anarchism, not like voting for the left wing or being a liberal voter. Like I always thought it was like damn the man and like the system is messed up, and
yeah,
it was kind of like live in it, not of it. Almost, if I dare say, like the teachings of Yeshua. So like
yeah,
that's what I felt about it, but I could be wrong. But I think now it's a joke. Like I can't even take. I'm really glad and thankful for COVID, because COVID has forced people to make a very bold line drawn in their life in one way or the other.
yeah. It kind of did do that. Yeah,
And I think that was just phase one. Um, but uh, and I mean that, I don't mean like we're gonna have COVID part two. I mean there are a lot of things I think we're gonna, as humans, we're gonna be experiencing a lot of big changes. And I don't say that as an alarmist. I just say that because if we made it through phase one, just remember there's gonna be more phases. We got more tests to pass.
oh yeah,
But I'm glad because a lot of people, I have seen a lot of people wake up. A lot of people didn't like being pushed around. A lot of people didn't like, having to wear a mask or whatever it was. And then when the vaccine rolled out, I think that was really good too, because for me, I kind of got annoyed with. I'm annoyed with both sides of the dichotomy when it comes to voting.
yeah,
Uh, I I have one side, or like our drummer is a great example. So Jesse Sprinkle, our drummer, played in Demon Hunter and Dead Poetic and Poor Lou and Cutlass, all these like Tooth and Nail Records bands. He's a little bit older than me, but he's amazing. But anyhow, he hated Trump, hated him, and he would go off about Trump all the time to me. And I was just like, And my response would just be, I just don't know him. I mean, I just don't know if I could judge him. Like, it seems to me like, number one, like I have a totally different view on this, than I could tell that Jesse wasn't where I was. But number two is like, I don't think I could say I hate anyone. I hopefully I don't hate anyone. Like I might hate their decisions, Like I might not approve of the way they're living, but I might not like the way they talk. But to hate somebody is pretty strong, you know, and hate only begats hate. So anyway, but I remember talking to him numerous times, even while recording this record, mind you. And when COVID happened, he's a great example. Like he now he's like, I think Trump did some good things, and he kind of, the pendulum went from one side to the other a little bit, but I think he's still more middle of the road at this point. But that's a great example. Like watching him and his wife and his family like switch like that, because we were forced into. I hope I'm not telling too many deep stories like that are getting us off track or anything, but he and I both in 2019, while I was recording this record, that summer of 2019, we had both we didn't vaccinate our kids, and it's just a personal belief. We
That's that's good, man.
never shoved it down anybody's throat. Just said, hey, like that's just not what we do. So we had our kids in public school in New York, and in July of 2019, while recording this record, I got a letter from New York State, and so did he, saying the religious exemption in New York State is now no longer valid.
Oh, they did that?
Before COVID. Yeah. And we were forced with the decision, do we pump our kids full of poison that we don't agree with, or do we homeschool? That's all. That was the only two options.
Dang.
And I do find it quite unfair that if you own a home and you have kids and you can't put them in public school, you still have to pay school taxes. I think there should be something for that. Like those people especially, like they should be exempt from school taxes, in my opinion. But taxes is another issue, right? Taxation is theft. Anyway,
Absolutely.
so back to that. He and I were forced into that, and then COVID happened, and we ended up not skipping a beat when all the other kids had to come home in early 2020. You know, it was like God just provided for us.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes I feel like God just pushes us out of our comfort zones on purpose, and it doesn't feel good. But sometimes, like, what you need isn't what you want.
Right.
And I think when you need something, that's when you do something. If you just want something, like, oh, I want to do that, I want that thing, or whatever. In this case, it was like sink or swim. It's like, all right, like you put your money where your mouth is. I feel like it was a test in a way, and we passed, and we got a reward and a blessing for it. You know.
Wow,
So
that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, man. Every time that I've in my own life I have, done something that I was scared to do or whatever, it's like on the other side of that was a lot of growth and a lot of, you know, meeting, very interesting people and, more in alignment with my thoughts and values. So,
yeah,
um, sometimes I think it comes with a traumatic experience. And just like you said, it's like, I think it's there to teach you a lesson.
you get shredded a bit. You know, you have to lose the old you. It's like you're blooming like a flower blooms, or you're going into the cocoon to come out as a beautiful butterfly. Now it's like, what's that statement? Like it's like the caterpillar thought his life was over until he became a butterfly. It's like that. You know, it's like when we get to that point of growth is means you are moving outside of your comfort zone. You know,
Right.
anything that's not growing is dead.
Right.
So
So I want to get into, you mentioned how music can be something that can maybe plant a seed in someone's mind. It's a way that we can affect the culture through art and music and things like that. Like,
yeah,
could you go into that further? Like, where do you see, how your music can affect, like,
yeah,
because there are a lot of lyrics in here that, like, if you're listening to this album, like, you're mentioning a lot of things that are like the agenda of how things are kind of steered on the planet here in the system that we live in. So, in the
hmm
direction that it's heading in. So, what do you think? What do you think about like the artist role in society? I guess.
Well, I always say this, and I'm just repeating what I've heard from one of my favorite artists, Miss Lauryn Hill from the Fugees, and just her solo career. Like she's an inspiration to me. Her MTV Unplugged record is one of my favorite pieces of art I've ever heard because it was basically a big fu to the record company. She had gone through a huge religious experience for herself. Like I don't even want to say religious, but spiritual, we'll just say. And all of these songs are about God that she wrote. And you would think MTV Unplugged is expecting you're going to play like some of your hits from the Fugees, maybe off of your Miseducation record. And she just had all this new material. And it was all about the system living in Babylon. And it was just so it's worth getting your hands on a copy if you can. And not just the songs, but she has all these interludes in it. But she's somebody that I feel like is just so before her time. And I feel like artists kind of are like the good ones. Like they have this intuition and they're I think what we're aware of, what artists are, is that like throughout history, artists have been people who live outside of society in order to expose society to itself.
Hmm.
Like we don't feel like we're really in it. We feel like we dip our toes in when we go to the library or we go get groceries, but we feel like kind of disconnected. We're kind of lone wolves and we're observing. And art is, if you think that art doesn't affect people, then I think you're living with your head in the sand because people are watching TV every night. They're watching Netflix. They're binge watching things. And I'll tell you something is that we live in a highly religious world. And I don't mean that in the sense of the organized religion maybe people are thinking of when I'm saying it. I mean, like, academia controls the media, they control art, and they are planting seeds in our children all the time. It's very spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
It's magic.
I
I would
didn't
almost say.
I didn't really realize this until I started to awaken to some things about symbols and the meanings of symbols and things like that. And I remember going to see, because I love going to music festivals, and I remember going to the Hangout Music Festival in Gulf Shores one year, and one of the bands, they were flashing the like all-seeing eye and like
Mhm.
pentagram stuff, and
Yeah.
like I'm like, whoa, man! Like, and this is, you're there enjoying the experience or whatever, and it's like these things are getting pushed on you. I
Hmm.
think probably with a lot of people, because I wasn't aware of a lot of this stuff before that, but then I was like, wow, they're really like getting this into people, that like this kind of, I guess, these programs are getting put into you without your awareness.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of gnarly. Like I think about even just the advertising. Like let's not even get into like the content of like something like a Marvel film, which has tons of like spiritual, like deity, like all kinds of things like that. But let's just talk about the basic level of a commercial that a child might be witnessing that's in front of the TV while his parents are watching the news. Okay. How many frames per second are these commercials switching? Like these frames are so fast, probably like 30 times, like maybe 100 times in like a 30-second ad. It's crazy. And that's causing ADD. Like kids can't focus because their brain is saying that this is the pace of life. So then when you try to sit your kid down and read them a story, they don't have patience. They're like, this is boring. This is like the devices are. There was a, what was it? It was Prince, I think, that said something like, there's a war in the mind, war for our minds, and the prize is the soul. And he said, he's like, you can get on the internet, but don't let the internet get on you. You know, like, because it's raping humanity, man. It is. Like, we're just letting it rape us every day. And
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
we
you talked about that disconnection before, and I think us being on and connected into our screens all the time is causing a lot of that disconnection.
hmm yeah, I mean, it's also like our faith is kind of in it. I feel like if it's on the TV, we're more prone to believe it. So you see like something happens on the news and you just take it at face value. You know what I mean? Like it's like you weren't there. And I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm just saying it's not making us very critical thinkers. Like we're just kind of taking everything in as the gospel, and it's not, you know?
Well, like you said, yeah, I guess you said this earlier. That a lot of people are. It might have been before we went on the recording, but when we were talking about how people are just trying to make it, and a lot of times they don't have the time to sit down. I know I've heard that from people in my life and my family. I've tried to confront them with some information, um, try to pass along some information, and they're like, "I have to live my life, man. Like, I don't have
Right.
time to sit down there and read all the stuff that you're trying to tell me to read. Like,
Right.
I'm living my life." And I'm like, "Well, okay, but you're going to be put under this stuff and you're choosing to ignore it,
Yeah.
and it's a problem, and the problem is going to continue to get worse. But I do have great I do try to have grace for people because I was there myself, man.
Yeah, totally. Me too. I get it. And if you're doing things that you love in life also, I'll say this, like I gave up music for a number of years. Like this was like a very much a sacrifice. Like I didn't think I was going to be playing music again because I went to go manage a campground and start a family in New York from Chicago. And when I hung it up for a while and just let it be, um I went into a new period of growth, like intellectually speaking, also just learning new skills, becoming handy. Like I had no clue about. I probably couldn't even remove like the door handle like with a screwdriver before I moved to New York. You know, I didn't have any skills. You know, and I learned a lot. I learned how I helped build my own house and
Oh
stuff
wow.
like that. So like my my capacity went up. I feel like I became more valuable in some ways, like as a human being. And it's amazing when you're not distracted because like I just wanted to make records. That's all I've ever really. That's like been my passion since day one is making music. And um, if I would have kept doing that, I would have stayed asleep. You know, I would have stayed asleep and just been like, well, I want to make my records and I don't want to think about that. And I'm glad that God took me away from my comfort zone. You know,
Hmm.
put me out of it, and it's a blessing. You know, there were things that I learned from the whole experience that I took away that I were like, well, maybe that wasn't healthy. Maybe I shouldn't have been there for that reason or whatever. But I feel like God used all of it, and in hindsight, made me better. You know, so um, yeah, man. I mean, it's just my kids don't have cell phones. I don't even own a TV anymore, and I live in a bus.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, I mean, I'm so far removed from it all. So going back to your first, like what you were asking me about artists, I think that artists, one thing that we know, I think if you're a good artist, you know that you're not even doing it because it's coming from a higher place. Like this gift that I have, I can't tell you. Like I have a tattoo on my rib cage of this robot, and it's pumping out sheets of music, like just out of the machine, and has this antenna on its head, and then there's this hand coming from the clouds with a remote control. So it's like God is like beaming this message to the robot to make this stuff. And that's
Wow.
me. Like
Yeah.
I know that like I don't have to try. I don't sit here like I'm not like Beethoven where where I'm handling it like an engineer, and it's just it's just there. I reach out when I'm in that state and I just grab it out of nowhere. It's God. I know it. I think that there's a book that Rick Rubin wrote recently, the producer, and it's a phenomenal book. And one thing I'll say is that I know Rick he's Jewish, but he's secular, I would say. Um, he's probably a little bit more new age. However, I love the term that he uses for the creator in the book, because he does recognize there's definitely something in charge that guides us all, and he calls it the source. And I'm like, yo, that's Yahweh. Yahweh's the source of everything. I don't, none of us creates anything, like he created everything, and we just take his creation and make things out of what he gave us, including our minds.
Yeah,
Like
we're
nothing here.
the physical um, part
we
of the.
recreate we recreate, we don't create.
Hmm. Oh well, I you know what I've come to in my life. I struggled for a while there, and kind of my darkest moment uh, is when had that I had this thing come to me. And it was just like I was just like, what am I here for? Like, why are we here? And the thing that came to me was like, we're here to I'm here to support life and to continue and expand creation and to create.
Yes, you're image bearing. That's what God is the creator. He's the source, and he created us in his image, in his likeness, to bear his image, you know, to create. And that's the point. But we're also here, and I think this is this is like my personal mission statement as a human being in this world, and it's to be a beneficial presence to everyone who I come in contact with. To somehow make it, hopefully they came in contact with me and I made their life better in some way. And I think if we all did that, I think if we all had that goal in mind, how can I be of service to helping others, even just through a very simple conversation, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that's something I've come to myself. It's like, you gotta what is it what is that saying? I guess is a man cannot serve two masters,
Ooh, yeah,
you know? Um
absolutely.
so like we should serve creation, we should serve God, and all of us as human beings are creations of God. We're all another part of God, I think.
We we're his creation, and like if we go to Satanism is just, I mean, what, like Anton LaVey or the Church of Satan or the Church of Set, they would just tell you that it's an exploration of the self. It's all about yourself. You are God.
You're God, yeah.
And that's a huge difference. Like people don't realize. Like it sounds harmless. Like, oh, it's just, but that's Satanism. I mean, that is it. They don't even know what they're saying. Like I don't think a lot of them, because they don't take God seriously. But Gnosticism is salvation through knowledge.
Yeah.
That that's where like believing in God is not just in God. It's an interesting thing too. Like believe is believing, because there has to be some sort of action. Because Satan, I'm sorry if I'm getting too religious on this, or Christian, but
No, go
um,
for it.
and I say that like I'm not really sorry, but I don't want to, like, bring you down somewhere you don't want to go. So I'm not trying to be shoving my views here, but yeah, if we think about Satan and Satanism, I'm trying to think of what I was just going to say. I kind of lost it there. Sorry. Um,
It's the rebellion against life, in my opinion. It's
yeah,
like it's the entire,
he's the
like
adversary.
you have the positive polarity, you have the negative polarity, and it's like
Yeah,
completely on the negative polarity side. So
it's kind of interesting.
whatever, God's plan is, it's like let's do the opposite. So
You
it's
ever hear you
like
ever hear this? If you add if you subtract the D from devil, it's evil, and if you add an O to God, it's good.
no, no. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that.
Anyhow,
Yeah, so I was, we were talking about, how art, I think art in, especially like music or like comic books or movies or things like that have a science fiction, all this stuff has a way of getting a message to somebody. Whereas if I was to talk to them and try to get this message across to them, they may put up guard blocks.
yeah.
But if you deliver a message through, another medium, whether
Mm-hmm.
it be like a painting or, any of, music and any of these forms of creativity and art, that you can get that message across without having somebody put up their guard blocks, I believe. So I think it's very powerful in that way.
Yeah.
Um, because like I've talked to people and tried to, deliver them some truth, that, it's things that I've looked into. And like the best you can do is like plant the seed, is from my experience, is plant the seed. And if they're ready, maybe they'll ask you more questions or something. But if they're not ready, then you just plant the seed and you move on.
Yeah, I think of it more. The seed's good because that implies growth, but also my one of my friends on Canary Cry Radio, Gons, he actually played on the first few Slave to Servant songs with me. But he always called it sticking a pebble in somebody's shoe. Like there's this, they can't quite get it out of there. It's like
Annoying.
if you're doing it in a way where you're kind, but like you made them think and you weren't too pushy, but it's there, you know, because
Yeah.
nobody's. I mean, how often does the debater, get somebody to swing to the other side? You know what I mean? We're just having a debate. Like that's not really. It's cool to have a debate. It sharpens you if you're truly, an open-minded thinker that will see other people's. I like to get other people's perspectives. When I ask somebody
Yeah,
what
I
they're,
do too. Yeah.
I'm not here to try to get my point across. I actually do want to understand what people and why people think, like what's going on and what's your story, like where, how does the background affect where you are today, etc. I think it's important to actually care enough to like ask people and not just try to get your point across too. So
Yeah, that is a thing, that I've had to work on, because, you get to a point where you're like, can't you just see this, man? And you want to just like shake people and just be like, come on, get it, get it. And, that's not a good way of doing it. It just kind of, people put up their blocks and, um, they just turn off. So, you know, I think, probably the best way of doing that is through some kind of creative effort and just showing people a different way. Like be the example.
absolutely. That's so important. Like live by example and create that future for yourself or for your find your community, be the community. It starts with one, and that's I mean, I'm in a huge place right now of growth. I don't know where I'm supposed to be. Like I feel like God's pulling me out of New York right now. I feel like I'm in a bus. I don't even know. Like for me, it's just going to these events has been awesome because I'm meeting all kinds of people and I'm seeing, wow, there's these festivals all over. There's people that want to hear art. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm very encouraged for at least where God has me right now. Like, but I don't know at the same time. It's kind of like scary. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Should I cling to the thing that I'm doing right now to make money, or should I just like trust in Him and go forward, or is there somewhere in between? I don't want to be foolish either, Got to
Right.
be. So, but yeah, with art, like I've heard people say like you can't make people think and feel at the same time, which is an interesting thought. I tend to think that you can because lyrics make people think. That's the part that makes the people think. The music, to me, the melody is the medium at which the lyrical content gets through. So you could sing anything in a song. It could be for something a completely different message, you know? Um, and that's where that lyrical content, I do think that after a while people start to, they might not realize it at first when they're hearing a song. They're maybe just hearing melody, but after a while, like the content starts to really, I think, affect the brain, affect the mind, the heart, the soul. We're all souls, you know, like that's what we are. We think about the physical, but we're spiritual, you know, like we don't know what it's like to grasp that like fourth dimension, like we're in this 3D world. But like I think of Yahweh as like this outside source that, like, if we were in a computer program, you'd see like that.
So yeah, let's get into this. So this is your new album, Escape Babylon,
Yep.
and so it's got this cool art on there with this elephant and like a donkey, like stepping on a donkey.
Yeah, it's a donkey carcass essentially. It's a dead donkey carcass, and
So yeah, explain that.
so yeah, that is it's a dichotomy of the political system. And on one side it's split in half, right? Like you got your blue, even the colors are almost like aligned perfectly because you have the red Republican and the blue Democrat, right? And the both of them are in engulfed in either water or fire, and you're either burning or drowning. You can't survive in that system. And that's on the back of it. You'll see, if you flip it to the back, you'll see that there are just remains, just bones of both those animals and their skulls and everything underneath the water. And that's where it ends, is in entropy, because the system is based in entropy.
So yeah, entropy is moving towards disorder and chaos.
Absolutely.
So you get right, like the first track is pretty wild. Like when you hear that first track, like you get into all kinds of stuff, like transhuman singularity, coercive cryptocurrency. You know, you're kind of laying out like
Yeah. Like I
the fiat inflation
yeah, because
systems.
like yeah, I think I tackled on the second verse is what you're talking about, and I say, do you feel it in your soul from
Yeah.
the bottom, from the bottom of your heart? Inside it's digging a hole in a war that's fought while both sides are bought. Because, well, let's face it, like every major war for over 200 years has been funded by the same banks. It doesn't matter who wins in that sense because the bank always wins. But anyhow, so in a war that's fought while both sides are bought, we somehow never cease to hesitate to fight to stop. Here's to progressive liberation through a government sanction. Here's to fiscal conservation through some fiat inflation. There's both parties right there. It's all it's all a
Yeah.
controlled dichotomy. Um, Transhuman singularity, coercive cryptocurrency. Yah, break down this tyranny in your name. You know, I think that we're comfortable in Babylon, as my friend Andy Jennings would say in his band Dissident Prophet. He's been playing music like this since 1996, believe it or not, in the UK. He's to
Oh
me,
wow.
he's to me like an OG, like somebody I look up to in this regard. And we actually started recording an EP today for Dissident Prophet, his band, and I'm helping him kind of produce it and do backups and play some instruments on it. But anyway, I say that because I mean, he's just such an OG. I think there are a number of artists out there that have been trying to do something in this realm, and I try to associate with those people if I as much as I can. Um, but yeah, so the song is, and then the bridge to it, it really does say, um, what we fear could set us free. Just that moment of redemption, something big, eternity, just beyond these three dimensions. I can feel it in my body, a metaphysical tsunami, something better than I could ever wish for every soul so systematically enslaved in your name, So that's just that track to me. I remember writing that on the campground that I worked at and lived at back in, I think I wrote it in 2015. And I remember copying and pasting Morpheus's speech to Neo from the Matrix because I wanted to open the record with questions
Yeah.
like, what is the Matrix? What is this system? And so
Yeah.
that's what destroying the eye is. That it's like the beginning of the questions. It's trying to like bring that cognitive dissonance, because if we just ask questions of people and we don't push people, but we just oh, well, then how does that work? Like kind of play Columbo on them a little bit, like, and I think that questions are the best thing, because I mean, I remember somebody asking me a question about politics, and that was what got me to go down the rabbit hole in the first place, because I couldn't answer them about my party, about something.
Hmm.
And I felt like an idiot. And the person was a lot younger than me. They didn't know they were sincerely asking me because I was speaking like I was the authority on something, and I had no authority. I had no knowledge. I was just going off of talking points off of Fox News, you know?
Wow, that's funny. I was talking to a friend last night just about that, and kind of our both had a similar story about that, where it was like somebody talked to us about like something in politics, and like at the time I had no idea what, and then had to go on. That kind of pushed me on a journey to like start looking into stuff.
Hmm. You
So
know how I was saying that, like, we live in a very religious world, and
yeah.
make no mistake that just because people don't believe in Christ, or they don't believe that in our particular eschatological kind of standpoint, I mean, look at Washington D.C.
I mean, yeah,
Look,
you can look at the government as a religion. People treat it as a religion. Yeah.
well, like, look at it. I mean, look at it's based on uh, Freemasonic
Like the architecture, the layout of the
art.
city.
Yeah, I was gonna say like geometria, or whatever you want to call it, sacred geometry, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like, look at all the pantheons, like the idea of, what do you have? Like, it says like in this temple, like, where they're like temples, like these are temples of memorials. You know what I mean? These are, what is the apotheosis of George Washington? That means he's ascending to godhood. Like, all these things are very, very religious and very spiritual, and a
Yeah.
lot of a lot of it goes back to the Greek gods. And I think something that people don't realize about history is that they think, oh, all these religions are the same, and I'm here to tell you, I'm not telling you what to believe, but I can tell you this is that like the Hebrew people were vastly different. They were monotheists in these were people that believed that humility was a virtue in a world where the Near Eastern world, every other religion believed that. Look at Romans. Look at the Greek. Like, humility does not exist in that culture. Humility is a weakness in those cultures. And furthermore, God, in the Hebrew culture, God created you and I as image bearers and as kings and queens, as royalty, to not rule over anyone else, but to rule over ourselves.
I like that you said that. Yeah.
What the Greek, I'm just using one example because pretty much all of them are the same, but I'll just use the Greek gods as an example. They created humanity as, because it really does read, if you read the text in it, it reads like the gods were like whining, like they were like, we don't want to do all this work. Like we need somebody to be our slave. Like that's essentially what the Greek gods did, was they created humanity to so that they could rule over them and have them work for them and be enslaved. And then they elect like the kings and queens, these monarchies, which were not part of the Hebrew tradition. Like you think about back in the Bible where it's like they're like, we want a king. The Hebrews, it's like, okay, but you're not. God's like, you're not going to like the king or queen, because all a king or queen is like an exception to the rule. They're like this intermediary, like, position between God and people. So they are like the royalty. They're like God on earth.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody can be God then when you put somebody like that in charge. And that's something to think about when we think about our politicians, and when we think about all these monuments, and when we think about what is it exactly that we believe.
That's what I try to get across on my podcast is to lead yourself. Like, be the person that you want to be in your life and lead the people around you. Lead your people. Like, become the best version of yourself. Like, I'm working on that myself right now, and
Good.
getting in better physical shape and everything. Cause like, you know, getting through the years to come and everything. Like, um, what good am I gonna be for my people if I'm not able to like physically help them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, our body's a temple, right? And we're
Yeah,
supposed to. I mean, it's a pretty big responsibility to treat your body right. But yeah, man, I just think it's funny when I hear people say that like religion's there to control, and I kind of get the sentiment because they're confused by all the different like religions. But if you study the Jude, I say it very loosely, with I guess the Hebrew, the Torah, like the what there is no other Near Eastern text that gives woman a separate creation story. So when people try to tell you that God is like, trying to make women, dim down or whatever in this belief system, it's so far from the truth. Like woman had her own creation story, separate from man in the Bible. But that's a whole nother rabbit hole, and I'll be covering a lot of that on my next record. So um
okay, yeah. Yeah, this one song I kind of got into, was listening to a few times. This Lucy May. It sounds like it was maybe you and your relationship with um, someone or whatever,
yeah, yeah. So
from the past.
my Lucy May is my daughter. That's her first and middle name. she was
Ah, okay.
she was my home birth baby. And it's odd, man. Like I've never, um, I have my son definitely pulls more from his mother, and I'm more of an artist. Like by nature, I'm more of a right brainer. That doesn't mean I'm not an intellectual, because I definitely am an intellectual, but I'm very in tune with feelings, and I'm very in tune with creativity and stuff like that. And my daughter is my clone. It's crazy. It's so crazy. She she's the most eccentric person I've ever met, and in a really positive way. Like she's just totally herself, and I see her every day, like just growing, and I'm like just so encouraged by her positivity. And like, so this song Lucy May, I wrote it about my divorce. So like going back to that album cover, it's kind
Hmm.
of, so the album cover shows you like it's like split personalities, right? Like you have the fire and the water and the two different beasts in the system. But I'd say a good chunk of this record, a lot of afterthoughts came because when I started writing the record, I was a podcaster, and I had a Christian truther kind of like podcast called God's Property Radio.
Mm-hmm.
We were part of Revelations Radio Network, which Chris White Ministries, Chris White had started that RSS feed, and a bunch of other amazing shows. Like it was a community. It was really cool. And when that came to an end, it actually kind of came to an end because I was going through a separation and eventual divorce with my wife at the time. And I had to switch careers and stuff, and I had to rebuild my whole life essentially. And so I was writing this record or beginning to write it in 2015. And then in 2016, everything fell apart. And I had to just put everything on the back burner and kind of forget about it for a while and let life kind of, I don't know, sink or swim, like, and that being said, like when the album that I was writing, it still had the same album cover ideas and a lot of the songs are on there, but it was said to me by the rabbi actually, that I like I was hanging out with the rabbi today, but he said to me, like the day that I got my divorce, like he said, it was official. He's like, I think that you should write some songs about this. I think that it would be good for you to kind of therapeutic. And so I had all these songs about God and about the world system and from a very Christian worldview. But then I had these other songs that I started writing about that. And so it's sort of like a split personality thing. It's like you read the song before Lucy May or Never Greener, like so like the things I never knew. It's so funny, man. I never used to use swear words in music, and I wasn't really a Christian then. Like I was kind of more new age and just making records secularly. And here I am putting out the most spiritual thing that I've ever put out in my life, and I'm using the F word as I'm screaming at God in a song.
Mm.
So, like the things I never knew is like the companionship piece to Lucy May. Like it's like not companionship, but like the dichotomy of it. It's like they're placed perfectly. The violent song, and then the song of peace after, and then a song of even more further peace after that, which is Yeshua, like kind of like the praise song on the record to God. But yeah, that song for my daughter when I was going through the separation, it was really a hard thing for me, and my my ex moved a guy into my house that I was paying the mortgage on, and I was living next door with my parents. Um,
Whoa.
and it was trying times, and the way the story kind of ends is that I knew that I got better. I knew that like God had healed me when I was in the backyard of my parents' house looking at my old backyard that I used to live in. This is after the divorce was final. This is years later. But watching her now husband hold his child that he had with her in my old backyard like I once did, and
Damn.
my first thought was awe, like that, like I know I know what that was like I'm happy for him, you know. And so that it took me a while to get there, but this song was written after all that. And
Mm.
this song was a promise that I made to my ex. I said, like I just think that women, as including my ex and including my last relationship too, like there's a there's a serious women are not being taught how to be loved by a man in order to love a man, and vice versa. There's a lot of broken homes, and
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in one of those, but I seem to be drawn to women that are from broken places. It's really weird. Um, However, when this happened to me and my family, I said to my ex, I said, "Well, we're still a family, like and I'm gonna see to it that Lucy is, she's gonna know how to love a man. She's gonna know how to be loved by a man. She'll always know her worth, you know."
Yeah.
And so I that's what the song is kind of. It's a love letter. It's a love song to my daughter,
Hmm.
and it's yeah, it kind of walks you through a little bit over it.
Yeah. I mean, when you're singing her name there, I mean, it's something drew me to that song. Like, I was like, wow, this I could feel some of your emotion in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the truth. Lucy May, you're the accolade that I'll never deserve. Lucy May, such an anomaly, simply the scarcest of girls. Lucy May, sometimes it's hard to stay true to the beat in your heart. Lucy May, sometimes the final page is the best place to start. Over. And that was about me starting over, you know? It
Yeah.
was she was with me, man. Like I was in a cover band and I would suit up for these cover gigs at casinos and weddings and stuff. And I'd come home and I was broken, bro. Like I was completely broken. I didn't have a woman in my life, you know, and she would say, "Daddy, you're handsome." Like, dude, she would hold my hand anytime. Like, just the love that pours out of that girl is just it's crazy. Like, I'm comfortable with never being married again. I because the love that I get from that girl and my son too, but her especially, like she's taught me a whole new meaning of love. And here I am writing a song about teaching her how to be loved, and she's the one teaching me how to be loved.
Wow.
Just look, I can give you something deeper than mom could ever give you, or that you ever experienced with any woman. Like I genuinely love you, like with everything that I have, and it's amazing, man. It's like such a anyway.
Oh, that's really cool, man. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't have kids myself, but you know, I would love to have children someday, and that's a really cool story that gives makes it you know, just encourages that for me. Um, so yeah, this escape Babylon. It's like you're talking about, like, you know, jump over the fence, escape. You know, while it's like not too late, and get out. You know, wake up, stay awake.
Yeah, the that one that was one of the last ones I wrote actually for the record. And I had never I've made about 15 albums in my life, and I've never written an album where this there was a song that was like the title track, you know, where it was like the name of the record. Like my first record I ever made was called Remembering to Forget. Well, I've never had a song called Remembering to Forget, you know. So it's like that idea. I was like, I think it's time to cross this off my bucket list and write a song that goes with the whole theme, you know. And that's just, and this is, mind you, like this is all before COVID too. Like there's some stuff on here that if we get to birth pangs in a little bit, you'll see what I'm talking about. But there's almost like some sort of prophetic stuff that that is occurred in the lyrics here. But yeah,
You wrote this pre-COVID.
yeah, this was I started writing it in like 2015. I put it on the I put it on hold in 2016, and I didn't come back to it till 2019. And I decided that summer, it was my busiest summer as a cover musician. I played 193 gigs that year in 2019.
Oh wow.
So the cash was flowing. I was doing good. I was like, I'm gonna. This is it's time. It's weird, man. It just snapped like that. Like I had taken a break from creating for so long, and it was like I was in now I was becoming the butterfly again. I was like the caterpillar, right? Like, and I just felt like this wave of like the flood of inspiration. And for some reason I also felt like the there was this sense of urgency. Like it was like I don't know what's going on in the world, but I learned all this stuff for a reason years ago, and I feel like I need to like tell the world about it.
Hmm.
And I was mixing the record with James Paul Wisner as the lockdowns happened. It was done, and
Oh wow.
I remember thinking, "Whoa! Like what does this mean?" Because I was thinking I would go on tour and maybe just do the whole normal like circuit and try to play cities and stuff like that and try to fit it in my own way. And I've since realized that I think I'm wondering if God just it's hard to know, but I'm almost wondering if this was better. Like if God had a better plan than I could foresee, right? Like maybe I was going to go find my tribe. Maybe I was going to help create a renaissance with other believers and other people that are truth seekers, and we create our own art and own subculture. Maybe that was the plan. That was his plan all along. It's like, no, don't go into that thing. Don't go into the beast system. Stay out of that. Go do this. You don't need them.
No, no, absolutely not, man. Like, there's all these independent artists out there now that are doing their own thing. They're just getting their stuff out there, and pushing their stuff, making their own videos, and doing all that, staying independent. And look at that guy, Oliver Anthony, with the "Rich Men North of Richmond" song.
Yeah, that's
Somebody got a good quality camera in front of him, and they shot that video, and he was just pouring out the music that was coming to him, like you're talking about, and
hmm,
that went just viral because it struck a chord with people.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's like all these ways that can get out there now.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't think musicians need the labels anymore.
I don't think so. I think that the labels are definitely on their way out. I think that they're good for something because a label is essentially a bank. A label is there to go get your loan on and have to pay them back.
Right.
And hopefully you
Yeah.
play the cards right and you can,
Hopefully you read that contract well. Yeah.
right. And I don't know, like there are definitely benefits to a label. I'm not opposed to signing to a label if it were in my best interest to do so. But seeing as I don't think any major label at this point would want or even think about supporting an artist like me with the content that I'm putting out. I don't think like the next video I'm about to drop, I don't think they would touch it. Like I play Hitler in the video. You know, like and I'm obviously so far from, I'm not saying that Hitler's good at
Yeah.
all. It's actually a mockery of Hitler in some ways, but it's also a mockery of like the political system. And if anything, I think Republicans should be mad at me for this video more than liberals. But we'll see. I don't even know. I don't know how it's gonna do. But
Dude, that I love all that controversial stuff, man. Like, I mean, when
yeah,
you're telling the truth and you're like trying to wake people, or you're like trying to put your message out there, it's like that shocking stuff is what does it a lot of times.
yeah. I'll send you a preview of it if you want to see it.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting on the last scene of it was cut. He did something goofy at the end where he didn't let the song ring out, and he kind of went Monty Python and created all these credits with bloopers at the end. And I'm like, why would you do that? That's like so silly. I just let the song ring out with like me being serious or something at the end. But anyway, so I'm waiting on him to just cut the ending off and make it normal. But I can send you a private link after this if you want to see it.
Yeah.
It's zany. So
Cool. I like all that stuff. Like there's these artists like this high res guy that does a lot of cool videos like that where they're just kind of poking fun at the system and stuff like that. And I love that stuff, man.
yeah, no, I mean, me too. It's fun, man. That's another thing that I'm really passionate about is I write all my own music videos and
Oh wow.
I buy all the costumes and then I pay people to film me and pull it off. And um, in most cases, I edit them myself too. But
Oh
in
wow.
in some of the cases, like this one's edited by somebody else, and he's just really good at what he does. Um, so I pay the extra money sometimes. For me, it's a lot of money. Like spending $1,000 on a music video that you might get 300 views on is kind of hard to do, hard to justify that, like monetarily speaking. However, I think that if I just keep putting them out, eventually maybe it'll catch on, and then people go back and watch them, and they'll be worth that, like what I put into them. But I will say this is like it's just also it's part of creativity. It's like the song takes on a new meaning when you do it. It's like it's another medium, as you were saying earlier. It's like being able to utilize that, I think, is really valuable. And I don't know, I grew up in the MTV age, where there were videos, but I like music with a message. I like a storyline. I like plotting things out, even if it's silly. Like if I have to get in a bunch of sheep costumes or a bunch of pig costumes with cop outfits, then okay, so be it. Let's go.
Nice. I like that. Oh yeah, so yeah, you got the Yeshua song is pretty cool. I like that one as well. Uh, especially when you kind of that the way that your voice comes out when you're just like kind of like crying out Yeshua.
Yeah, the falsettos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually the first song I ever wrote for Slave to Servant.
Oh
And
really?
I think that one I wrote in 2013.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so I didn't have all the lyrics done, but most of them were done for the verses. And yeah, that song felt special when it came. Again, like I can't claim I don't own any of this stuff. It's just stuff that comes to you, like it's I'm here to share it. And
You're like the vessel.
exactly, that's exactly what I am, just a vessel. I can't take it with me. It's here, it's a gift. It's like it's such a cool idea. I will say, I think that we want to I think all artists want to be remembered. They want to leave a piece of themselves behind, you know and that's why I find so much value in making like the vinyl or the CD, or having a physical piece of that somebody can hold on to and pass on to their kid or their friend. Or I just like that idea of holding something and like being able to read the lyrics and see when it was recorded or where it was recorded, and see all the art, because then there's that medium too, right? Like the artwork, I didn't do the artwork, like it was my idea, but my friend Tommy did the art. Like he's an amazing artist from Chicago.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. Who created the art for this?
Yeah, my buddy Tom Demavivis uh, did the artwork. And I had photoshopped. I have enough Photoshop skills to put together like a basic uh, idea of something, but it won't look like that. It's just I'll take a bunch of images and I'll put a bunch of effects on them or something, and send it to something, and he'll literally recreate. He'll draw the elephant. He'll draw the donkey. That's his art. What he does.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you as well. Is like, what is that process like for you for like when you are writing the lyrics? Like, do you find like a quiet space? Do they come to you in like a dream? Is it like pieces of things that come to you? Like, how does that happen for you?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do you hear the melody first with the song, or?
Yeah, usually it's when I'm in a very relaxed state and I'm around a lot of my songs come to me when I'm around my family, like my parents or my kids, when I just know I'm in a very safe place around safe people and good people, you
Hmm.
know? Um, when I'm not even trying and I'm just strumming three chords all of a sudden, and all of a sudden a melody just sticks out to me. And it comes through melody most of the time, but sometimes a song will just kind of write itself. And that's when I think you got something really good, because it almost seems like it's meant you kind of have to, you can't plan these things, and you can try to be in the state that maybe exit on a little bit, but when you're receiving it, then you just have to just try to go as long as you can while you're in that state. It's
Hmm.
weird. It's very spiritual. Sometimes you don't have time, and that's when I just use my phone, and I'll just take a voice memo, and I'll just record real quick. Okay, I got to remember this melody. But yeah, it comes in melodies most of the time, and the lyrics come later for me a lot of times. But sometimes, like, it's just like Destroying the Eye or Yeshua, those choruses just came to me, like the one word or the three words. It was just this in your name. I was like, in your name, like this, just this whole, the melody came while I was strumming. I mean, that song Destroying the Eye is like one chord. It's like one chord the whole time on the chorus. I mean, well, there's two, I guess, but it's very simple. And that's what I learned from Nirvana was simplicity is like, three chords can really make a beautiful song if you know how to put melodies over the right melodies over it and change things up enough to where it's not too redundant. But yeah, I mean, it usually lyrics take me a while. Um, it's kind of painstaking because I feel I can write songs very quickly if I want to, and I can just write songs about just free state, emotion or life. I've done that. I did that when I was in Chicago from 2001 to 2011 with three different bands that I was in, and those. Not that there's nothing being said in those, but I take Slave to Servant very seriously in the sense that I have a. It's sort of like a a commission from God to say something worth saying, and I'm not trying. A lot of times in the songs, I'm not trying to preach, and a lot of times it's like we. It's not like me or you. It's like us. It's like trying to talk to the broad spectrum and apply myself to it as well. But I think that the content in all these songs came from, again, just learning and changing my mind about things and being open to a different story than what's being told to humanity and studying history and studying, dare I say it, like even science is it's pretty much religious, like at this point, like
Yeah, scientism.
scientism, exactly. Like you can't even like just the idea of like Darwin and like all the
Yeah,
work.
yeah, it wasn't the original like the book. It was like the something of the favored races or something like that.
Well, yeah, because Darwin's cousin, I'm trying to remember his name. It starts with an R. It was like Rasmussen or Ras. I forget his name, but he's the creator of eugenics.
Yeah, yeah, I think it
So
was
like,
the preservation of the favored races or something.
yeah, I did. I should be able to like name these names. I interviewed people on this stuff. Like I have the receipts all on like on YouTube, from those years. They're still there. But yeah, I mean, the basic concept of evolution, it's a broad term to say evolution. So on its face, yes, microevolution exists because you have different kinds of dogs, different kinds of cats, different kinds within a species, quote unquote, right? But there's no evidence for macroevolution. Like you can't get a kangaroo out of a rock. Like
Yeah,
you can't observe that. And when you realize that what they're doing is there really are like microevolution that could pass. You don't even have to call it evolution. You could call it something
I think
else.
they
Like,
call it epigenetics now.
yeah, yeah. And so, but I mean, we've never seen a star form. Like that would be stellar evolution. Like all of those things have to, there's like six kinds of evolution that would have to be observed for the whole thing to work as it's taught. It's very confusing on purpose. It's like, oh, well, this is based on a theory. Well, what's a theory? Well, it's a belief. I mean,
Yeah, basically, I mean, you come up with an idea about how you think that you can describe this thing, and then you try to test it out and test it out and test it out. And, if it doesn't agree, then, you got to throw that one out. You got to come up with something new.
absolutely. And like going back to the first song on the record that we were talking about, like I talk about that in that first verse, like, and I was very intentional about this, like tying in with this upcoming video that's coming out because um I said like evolutionized identity. Like, what did I say before that? It was like something about, do you feel it in your bones from the bottom of and to the top inside you? Take
Taking control.
control. in a world that's cracked while the odds are stacked, we somehow never cease to hesitate to spin our backs, we turn our backs on each other. When it's survival of the fittest, what's the point in compassion? Seriously, what is it? What's the point in like having compassion for
Yeah, if you think that way, then it's like I got to get mine and screw everybody else. Yeah.
Darwinian? That's Darwinian. That's science. That's what we're taught in the public school system. You know, I mean, what is the point? And then the the point about the hospital, right? Like the what's the point in compassion? Why even cure disease in in a hospital cash in? Because it's a business. Like you're losing business.
Yeah,
You're
the modern medical system model is to kind of keep you sick because if you're healthy, then you lose a customer.
totally it's backward. And then evolutionized identity, gorilla-like propensity. Lord help this extreme. You want to talk about extreme? That sounds pretty extreme. That whole thing that we've been fed seems more extreme to me than what like the left might call the right on extreme, or what the right might call the left on extreme. Like, no, I think you guys are like all believing in the same bullshit.
Yeah,
I
you're right
think
about
I,
that.
I think it's extreme to live as a slave in this society. You know,
Yeah, yeah, and it is for our own ignorance that
and and
we
if we
live that way.
yeah, and if we followed the evolutionary scale, then me making a video where I play Hitler in this song really isn't too far off, because Hitler was just following the evolutionary Darwinian theory. So he was just living out his beliefs.
Yeah,
So you can't really fault him at the same time. You're like, wait, well, yeah, what is the point in compassion? Like, what, if we're all just chemicals, why can't we just throw chemicals in people, and all this poison in people? And like, if there's just a big bang, we're all accident, then everything's on accident, and there's no intentionality or design or purpose. So what's the point? Like, that to me doesn't make sense.
oh yeah, yeah. That's the path to nihilism and to yeah. You can justify all kinds of things if you go down that road. Yeah, you can go down the moral relativism road where what is right is different for whoever. So you and that leads to chaos and disorder and entropy like you're talking about. Like you do need to ground yourself in the truth, and there is a truth with a
There is.
capital T,
It's just,
and without
it's.
that foundation you're lost.
I agree. I mean, if you are seeking the truth, I think you will find it if you're truly looking for it. But I think a lot of people aren't looking for it. I think a lot of people are looking for comfort and safety, and I get it, you know, but I just can't live that way anymore. It's dangerous to do for yourself. It's dangerous to live outside the system and be self-reliant. And um, somebody at the Self Reliance Festival in March, I don't know who the speaker was, but they ended their spiel, and it really impacted me. And he said, "You can have freedom or you can have safety, but you cannot have both." And I was thinking, man, because safety's not safe. It's just not. Like, look at the zoo. Like, these lions and tigers are quote unquote safe, but they're losing hair. They're not getting enough sunlight. You know what I mean? Like, do you really want to be in the zoo?
Yeah, do you want to go join your pod and put on your VR headset and get your IV drip of the protein formula? Because that's the direction it looks like. From one of the possible scenarios that we're moving into here into the future is like everybody's living in a place they rent, permanent renter, constantly connected to the internet. You can't go anywhere because you don't have enough of the funds to get there or do that. So you're kind of locked down in this one area.
And then
So yeah,
you retire and you're collecting Social Security and not making enough to survive with Social Security.
yeah,
So I guess there is no security.
Social insecurity.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, that I like
Yeah.
that. That should. Um,
Yeah. Uh, so yeah.
so
Uh,
real quick, because you brought up Yeshua,
yeah.
on I have a previous CD called Singularity.
I have
And,
that one here too.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
For
So destroying the eye and Yeshua tie into the first track on that. And if you're to listen to it, it's essentially the melody of the chorus to Destroying the Eye, but it starts off with my friend Leonard Ulrich, who's a he's a double major in history. Um, he was a teacher and he quit teaching history because of the nepotism and the just learning the truth about the true history of the world, and couldn't indoctrinate kids anymore, and decided to take it upon himself to create a documentary series. And so he's one of the guests that I used to talk to on my old podcast. I actually composed the score to his second film in his documentary series called The Illusion of Money, and that featured the first official recorded slave to servant song called Baptized in Credit, which is also on that CD that you're holding. But that all being said, Leonard and Rob Skiba, another researcher that he was friends with and that we were friends with and had on our show, they pointed out that the Hebrew name for Jesus, which is Yeshua,
yeah.
the pictographic images that are the Hebrew alphabet, I'm not, I would botch it if I tried to enunciate properly those, but you can listen to that, the hand that destroys the establishment of the eye, and Leonard goes through it, and each of those letters can technically have like seven meanings, but one of these meanings, when you put them all together, is literally Yeshua means the hand that destroys the establishment of the eye.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's
It's
interesting.
it's trippy. So that ties in with both Yeshua, the song, obviously, and the song that I wrote called "Destroying the Eye." It's like kind of a companion piece for both those songs.
Wow.
So a lot of depth. It's like we're in a slave to servant multiverse.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So,
that's wild.
but yeah, there's dialogue of Leonard going through that on that song. You'll hear him talk about it if you listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah, so Sam, thank you for taking the time. So, what's one thing that you haven't told anyone that you would like to get across to people? Maybe something about yourself. Um, maybe something. Maybe a thought.
Hmm, a good question. You're making me think here. I mean, I could just say something. I mean, I don't have. You're my second interview on this new release, so I've done a few interviews in the past, and I used to interview people, so there's not a lot out there. If I can just say that the last song on here on the record, which by the way, the CD version has a bonus track, which I'm not talking about that one. That's the last song on the CD. But
I realized that today. I was like, hey, where does this one come from?
I had to give the CD some extra value, because I feel like everybody wants vinyl, and I get it, but you can't fit as much on a vinyl record as you can on a CD. And I was like, I had one song that I hadn't done anything with, and I just felt like that song, it's good, but it's just, I was like, I'm gonna cut it from the track list officially and just have it as a B side or something. But then when I decided to finally pull the trigger and make the CD, I'm like, you know what? For the people that buy a CD, they get a bonus track. So, however, the song that's on the digital version and the record, track 13 on all of the releases, is called Birth Pangs.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling you that I recorded the album in 2019, was mixing it in 2020 and mastering it while we were on lockdown. And I mixed it with James Paul Wisner, who did Paramore and Dashboard Confessional and Further Seems Forever and Under Oath, those bands. And then I mastered it with Howie Weinberg, who mastered Nirvana's Nevermind and Smashing Pumpkins and Red Hot Chili Peppers and Faith No More and all those kinds of bands. So it has some pretty decent names and talent behind the boards, speaking from that perspective. But the last song on the record, and mind you, again, this was tracked in 2019, but the last lyric on the record is this: the path to heaven is straight, but not so wide. Enlightenment don't stem from a third eye. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, sick infections, and mass injection. See no connections. Birth pangs.
Whoa.
And and then and then the lockdowns happened. And then Operation Warp Speed happened. And I think it's kind of crazy that I wrote my like last, ender to the record to be that way, and then we went into that. I
Wow.
don't. It's again, it's like I'm not taking credit for that because I couldn't. I'm not a fortune teller. I'm not God, but I think that God gives these gifts to artists and people who are open to receive the truth, and I think that I've been willing to accept it and then share it. And I didn't realize that. So I think that adds some gravity to the record.
Oh yeah, yeah. That you were seeing this and writing about it way ahead of time.
And I sat on the record for 3 years. It just sat there. I was like, I can't release it right now. It just I pressed the vinyl a year ago with the intention of maybe releasing it, and then I didn't see I don't know, I just got a green light. Self Reliance Festival was the green light for me. I was like, you know what? I'm coming back here. I'm gonna release this record. And we played all 13 songs and you got to witness it.
Yeah.
And that's I mean, I don't know if I don't think we're gonna play 13 songs next time we play. So you probably are one of the only people that's gonna get to hear the record in its like entirety like that. So thank you for being there, and it was a pleasure. I enjoyed speaking with you. I mean, it got very deep there at that merch booth. Like just talking. So
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was good to connect with you. Um, I rarely uh, do I find people that I can kind of go deep with conversations like that about, and like we've had on the spiritual aspect of things. So,
hmm
and I can tell that you've gone down and looked into a lot of different stuff.
yeah,
Uh, So yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. Where can people find you? Get the album, support you guys with your music and your band, and
yeah,
uh, how could people find you?
yeah. You can go to so the band is Slave to Servant, like the number two, and it's spelt out PWO. So you can go to slave2servant.com/store and purchase. We have posters for both the releases. We have vinyl, CDs, T-shirts, stickers. I'm working on getting some more things, but um, I'm sure I'll have more. You can go on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, iTunes, Deezer, whatever streaming platform you listen to. I guarantee that Escape Babylon is on there, and so is Singularity. You can listen to all the songs. Um, and then find us on, the thing that I try to ask, like, if you're not interested in buying anything, that's fine. But it really would help us out right now is if you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to it, share our music videos with people. I spend a lot of time and money on these videos because I believe that one day it's going to make a difference for something. I don't know what, but if you could go there and subscribe to that, become a follower on, if you listen to Spotify, if that's like your thing, go be like, I think we have like 88 followers, so we haven't even hit 100 yet. It would be really nice to actually, I don't even want to like, I know there's people out there that I could go to and they could get me fake, like plays, and I don't want any of that. I just want a real connection to who's really listening. So if you like it, please just go follow us on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, become friends with us on Facebook, Instagram. I try to post. For some reason, Instagram is like my favorite place, just because you can post and peace out, and there's not a whole lot. But I keep getting told, like, John Willis is like, you need to start TikTok, and I'm like, so it just seems like another thing to hook me in, you know. But I think he has a point. Maybe at some point I'll get on TikTok. But yeah, if you want to find us on those, it's just at Slave to Servant TWO. That would be really helpful. Also, I wouldn't mind shouting out a couple resources for people that want to just seek more truth. But my friends Basil and Gons have been doing Canary Cry Radio since 2012, and my show, we were buddies. Like, we probably got into it about the same time when I did God's Property Radio. But when the pandemic, I hate even saying that word. I'm going to correct myself. The pandemic happened.
Yeah.
When that happened, they decided to go full time with Canary Cry News. So 3 times a week, you can go subscribe to them on any podcast app or whatever. I use Apple myself, but Canary Cry News Talk, what they do is they kind of do what No Agenda does. They break down the news that's coming in, and they got their finger on the pulse of a lot of stuff. So they broadcast Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week, and it's from a biblical worldview. They've got a lot of credibility. Their show, Canary Cry Radio, they just started rebooting it, and I was the most recent episode on it for this album before coming on your podcast here. And you can go back and listen to some, just the researchers that they've talked to is phenomenal. I mean, they even had, I think Basil talked to Rand Paul one time. Like, he got like 5 minutes with him on his phone. Like, he just like recorded the conversation as like a little episode. But not that that matters. Like, I don't care about the political figures, but it's just such a wild roster of people and viewpoints.
I've
And
never heard of it. Yeah, I'm gonna
yeah,
check it out.
their tagline is "Think outside the cage." So it's pretty rad.
I like
But
that.
they're good people. They're about my age, and I just see them as people that are just putting truth out there, and trying, having humanity's best interest in mind, and trying to, like, really, they'll deconstruct these news articles and show you the propaganda. Like, do you see how they phrase that? Do you see what they're talking about? Like, do you see what they're insinuating? Like, it, but they don't do it in a paranoid, alarmist way. They do it in a very humorous, like, prudent way. So good
That
people.
that's
So
what we need. We need more humor because it's when you do look into that information, it gets kind of dark sometimes.
yeah,
So yeah, slave two spelled out TWO servant
yeah,
on YouTube and Instagram. And then is it the same on the other platforms like Spotify and
yes,
okay.
same universal for sure. And I did want to tell you, I guess I'll announce it now, but I know what our next scheduled show is going to be.
Yeah.
We're playing on Sunday, March 10th, probably in the evening, 6 p.m. at the Refuge Ruckus for Bear Independent. And
Oh, nice.
Caleb House, they're having Slave to Servant play their festival.
That's
Uh,
awesome, man.
so that's really cool. Just got that call today. Uh,
Where is that gonna be?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's in Oklahoma. I might be wrong. I'll have to. I would think so because that's where they're located.
Yeah,
So
just let me know and I can put that in the description too of the video.
yeah, I should probably look it up and find out for sure. But yeah, I'm excited. I and if you, any of the listeners listening, like, if you guys know any other festivals that are happening, I know there's like the Midwest Preparedness Fest. There's all these kinds of festivals like this, and this is really where I want to. It's where my heart is leading me at this point. Is these kind of things, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's Liberty festivals. There's like this one called Childerberg. There's like one that's the Pork Fest up in New Hampshire. There's Jackalope Festival. There's, all these kind of things all over.
right, right. I'm looking to create a database. So if you or anybody else wants to reach out, email me at slavetoservant@gmail.com. Also, because this is really, I'm like the brainchild behind Slave to Servant, and I don't look at it as like a specific band, though it would be fantastic to have actual band members that that I knew wanted were down for it to go tour and play. But it's largely a volunteer basis at this point, and so I'm looking for other people that want to play drums, bass, lead guitar. Like, you can email me too. I have tutorials up on the YouTube channel, and um, I have a tab on the slavetoservant.com website where you can learn the guitar parts, the secondary guitar parts for Escape Babylon. I'm just looking for people that want to get involved and help. If you, even if you know somebody that puts together Spotify playlists and you want to like, hey, put this on somebody's playlist that you're friends with that is trying to promote this kind of music or this kind of message or whatever, like, feel free. Like, I'm looking for
Yeah,
anything.
let's get it out there.
This is a grassroots movement. Literally, I'm starting from scratch right now. So I appreciate any interest, any help, whatever you got. I very much will respond to anybody that reaches out to me. So
Excellent, excellent. Well, Sam, it's been a pleasure, man. It's really good to talk to you. Let's do this. Let's do this again sometime, man, and stay in touch.
absolutely, Greg. Thank you for being so rad. And like I said, that conversation we had was deep, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me, and ask me these questions. So
All right, I appreciate you. Appreciate you coming on, and we'll catch you next time, man.
yeah, man, send me a link when it's all strung together.
Will do.